So even if I have fractions that are algebraic, we know that's times on top and divide on bottom. And now with powers, we just have to make sure that we're using power rules. Okay, so we're counting the exponent parts, and we can only count the bases that are the same together. So here I'm just going to write this as one big fraction as 3a squared times a is a4b. So this is just one big fraction of times on top. On the bottom, I get a times a, b4 times b squared is b6. Now I can see exactly how many a's and b's I have in times and divide. So I have an extra 2 a's up here, and I have more divides, and I have an extra 5 divides. So I'm going to have that as b5. So my strategy was to just kind of get grouped, figure out this, although there's two fractions, really it's just one fraction when it's times. It's just times on top, divide on bottom. It's just a numerator and denominator. So same thing here. I just have to make sure that I have, that I know what's on top and what's on bottom. Now, I did forget here that we really should start stating that we can't divide by 0. So I'm going to say that a can't be 0, b can't be 0. Okay, so I should do the same thing here. I'm going to say that a is not equal to 0 because there's a factor of a and there's a factor of b can't be 0. Okay, and so I have divide by a, divide by a, divide by b. So those can't be 0. But once I've done that, I'm just going to put the times on top, divides on bottom. Okay, so I'm going to have 8a cubed b7, 3a, and then just combine everything together here. So I'm going to make, well, before I do that, I'm just going to simplify this because this is going to be easy to simplify. So I end up with 16 a5 b9 a squared b. And now I can count up my times and divides for a. So I have a multiplied 5 times, divided twice. So I'm going to have an extra 3 a's here. And with the b's, I have 9 times 1 divide, or 1 cancels out. So I'm left with b to the power of 8. These ones start getting a little bit more complicated because there is pluses involved. Now, as long as we're clear that if there's a plus involved, that plus piece has to be a factor. But it is good to see the factor. So I'm going to factor this. If there's a greatest common factor, I'm going to factor that out. So I end up with a times a plus b. Here I end up with b4. Okay, and here I'm going to end up with times 1. There's a common factor here of a. And so I end up with 1 minus a4b squared. Okay, so there's no other factors here, so that's it. Well, there's only one common factor here. That's these two a's. Everything else are factors that don't match. So I end up with a plus b on top, a b4 factor down here, and I end up with 1, that whole thing ends up being a factor. And it's good to leave it in factored form. We're dealing with rational expressions. The factors are very useful, so we want to leave it in factored form. So I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to factor the a out to see what kind of factors I'm dealing with. So I have an a plus 1. I have a 2. I have a 1 on top here. I'm going to factor b out, and I end up with an a plus 1. Well, although these are binomials, they are factors, and these are times pieces that do match. Okay, because it's a times in here. It's not connected by addition, subtraction. So those will divide out. Okay, and before I cancel those out, I really should make sure that I state my restrictions. So a cannot be equal to -1, and b not equal to 0. Okay, because I've got it. This a here, it can't be -1. This b factor can't be equal to 0. And maybe we should do that here as well. So we have a factor of a not equal to 0, b not equal to 0. And this one here, we have to say that a4b2 is not equal to 1. Okay, we're not going to separate that out. We'll just keep that as one piece, not equal to 1. Okay, so finishing this one off then, we end up with a over 2b. Okay, that's my final answer. Again, I'm keeping track of my factors here. Okay, so this issue of not divide by 0, this is not one that we're going to focus on too much right now, but as we move into grade 10 math, grade 11 and 12 math, this is one that's really important that we don't divide by 0.